I'm Chris Dutchko, co-host of the Ninth Grade Experience podcast, a part of the Education Podcast Network, just like the show you're listening to now. Shows on the network are individually owned, and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other interesting education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of My EdTech Life. That's right, it is midweek, it is Wednesday, and I just want to thank you all for joining us on this wonderful, wonderful, beautiful evening and maybe day, wherever you're at. It may be already Thursday or well into Thursday. Wherever in the world you may be, thank you so much for making My EdTech Life part of your day. So thank you so much for joining us. And I know yesterday we had a show. Guess what? We have a show today. And guess what? We'll have a show on Saturday because sometimes when everything lines up and you just really got to take advantage of that. So I'm just really excited that today I have an amazing guest. I'm just so thankful that I do have the opportunity to interview Sean today, and we're going to be talking about Classcraft. So, I mean, we're really going to dive in deep into this. And so, Sean, thank you so much for being on the show this evening. How are you doing tonight?
Thanks for having me, Fonz. Really appreciate it. I'm doing great. I'm ready for the holidays, just like you.
And yeah, this is kind of like the slow season for me,
hmm
but because everybody's getting ready for holiday, kids are excited, teachers are excited, everybody's going to have a nice break. And again,
Yeah,
as always, we just wish everybody the best during this time. And we're just really excited for you to kind of just, sometimes unplug and refresh and then just come back strong coming back in January. So we'll see where that goes. But Sean, let's go ahead and get started. Like I said, I'm
yep,
really excited. We had a really nice chat and the pre-chat here before the podcast and so on. So for all our audience members that are watching us, catching us live right now, or will be catching the replay, can you give us a brief introduction and tell us a little bit about your context in education?
absolutely. It won't be that brief, but happy to join in. So my name is Sean. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Classcraft. And Classcraft is a platform that does two things really well. The first part is positive behavior intervention. Really, and we can dive into that. We have a pretty opinionated approach to best practices around you know managing classrooms and helping kids learn the skills they need to be good learners. At the same time, we're doing gamification, so focus on developing intrinsic motivation in classrooms. But my background is I was a teacher for 10 years. I was a physics teacher. I originally majored in physics and realized that as much as I loved it, research in a lab in a basement just wasn't for me. It's a lot of, tinkering with machines and trial and error, and I just wanted to be with people more. So, um, accidentally got into substitute teaching and just really liked it. And so ended up teaching for 10 years. I did a master's in education. And while I was doing that, got certified and did my thesis on using digital platforms to create learning communities in the classroom. So this will date me a little bit, but this was using Moodle and looking at if I encourage students, this was in high schoolers, to help each other with their homework in the digital platform. And it was just forums basically. What's the impact that that's going to have on how they are, interacting with one another in the classroom? And sure enough, helping each other on a digital platform outside of school meant helping each other physically in the classroom. And so I was just really obsessed with making school meaningful for learners. And because I had found it lacking in meaning as a student myself, and did that through built 180 days of project-based curriculum. We did awesome stuff like, you know, build hot air balloons and launch them off the roof of the school. And that kind of, STEM is so easy, but really easy to get hands-on and creative. But I realized that for a lot of kids, meaning came from the community that they had in school. So the classroom culture, the ways that they were interacting with each other, and had the idea. I'm a gamer, and while all that was happening, I was also a freelance web developer. So had a business consulting for pretty big companies. We worked for Chanel for 3 years in New York, and so I was, like, teaching by day, Monday to Wednesday, and then flying to New York to go do consulting, and just kinda took all those passions together and made, an app for myself, which was what was gonna become Classcraft, but the idea was to say, "I love video games, my students love video games, they're clearly way more motivated to grind in these games than they are to do their homework. Why? It's so, like, it's so repetitive when you think about it." At this time, I was playing, like, World of Warcraft, and, anybody who's played that knows you've got, like, killing the same monster 50 times, 100 times, 1,000 times, grinding, and why were they willing to spend all their time doing that and not willing to do math homework or physics homework? Like, why it was they're both really repetitive. Why is one motivating, not the other one? And so I really borrowed from, these experiences and made a prototype in a weekend. And for 3 years, that was it. I was just doing that with my students. And after 3 years, realized it was having a huge impact on the way that they were showing up, and made a little website talk about it. And the day that website went online, 130,000 people came to the website. And it was like, "Oh my god, people really want this." And, rest is history. That was, 9 years ago, and, now we're working all over the world. We have, 10 million kids in the platform. We're working all over the country, but also, a a whole bunch of places that are not in America.
Man, that is wonderful, Sean, just to hear. And honestly, what you were saying really resonates a lot with my experience in the classroom, being 11 years in the classroom. And again, kind of like I said, coming in from the business world and
Mhm.
marketing and sales. And then, of course, I landed in high school and I was doing algebra. And so for myself, never having done any student teaching, you yourself had the experience of doing some subbing and then you kind of, said, hey, this is for me. For myself, it was kind of like, hey, you've got enough math credits, so we're going to make you a math teacher.
Yeah, yeah.
Here you go. And talk about dating, yourself. I'm going to date myself too. They gave me two 3-inch ring, two 3-ring, 3-inch binders full of transparencies. So
Nice,
I'm
nice.
really dating myself there. It
Yeah.
was like the end of the day, I had like multicolored hands right here because of the marker and so on. But one thing I've
Like, the, like, screw up of, like, writing upside down.
yes, yeah, with the transparencies and all of
Yeah.
that. Yeah, exactly. No, 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 for sure. But what helped me though was to be able to translate those marketing skills into the classroom. And you
Mhm,
said like community is so important. So for marketing and sales, it's all about knowing your customers. And for myself, taking those same skills that I learned, within the university and saying, okay, I have 27, 30 individual customers in my classroom that I have to sell algebra to, and not everybody's going to buy it the same way. Talk
mhm,
about having to really improvise, adapt, and overcome. But the common factor here, going back to what you said, was really just the community aspect, building that community in my classroom, getting to know my customers, getting to know the way they buy things, in this case, understand the math and trying to work around their strengths and improve on their weaknesses really helps out a lot. And at that time, we didn't have computers in our classrooms, but as I moved into the elementary world, I had access to Chromebooks
mhm.
in the classroom, and I was that one teacher. We only had 2 Chromebook carts in the whole school. Teachers were kinda scared to use them, so I was that one teacher that had it checked out all year
Yeah, it's just
long.
parked in your classroom, right? Yeah.
Yeah, because I was using it every day. So, going
Mhm.
back to what you were saying, a lot of students do a lot of gaming, a lot of students do a lot of activities on their phones, they're very quite computer savvy when we're talking about, gaming, app applications and so on. But what I did notice too is that when you were give them, let's say, a worksheet or you're giving them some kind of task, they really were put off by that because and I think to me it's just because they don't get that immediate feedback. They don't get that
Mhm.
immediate response. So as they're answering a question, they're not, getting something there saying like, "Yes, you got this right. So here's 2 points," or "No, you didn't do that quite well. So let's go ahead and restart and respawn and let's go ahead and
Mhm.
start that activity all over again." So I'm
Totally.
glad yeah, I'm glad that you mentioned, your video game background, because I think as far as a teacher and that culture, you really have to engage the students. And not to say that there isn't a place for paper and pen and so on, but even with that, making it engaging, building that community. So I'm really excited to dive in deeper into Classcraft and what it does, which really I love the main thing that is here on the landing page where it says relationships are everything. So let's talk a little bit about that, Sean, and your
Mhm.
experience, and then coming up with this concept and this platform for our students.
Totally. Let's do it. I appreciate what you were saying earlier about marketing and sales. It's interesting because you came from business and went into education. I went from education and ended up in business. Um, and uh, and I've always trained lots of teachers now at this stage, but like you're selling this, and not only that, you're designing. As a teacher, you're selling and marketing, but you're also building a product. Um, and when we think about, and I'll get to relationships or everything in a sec, but when we think about what's the product, in fact, it's an experience. And when we, the reason, we talk a lot about engagement, and I think that I like to think more in terms of motivation. And the reason for that is engagement is just kids doing stuff. So you could be doing things, but not actually really being there, or I'm forcing you to do things by threatening you with bad grades or rewarding you with, a lot of schools are doing like money and paper money and that type of stuff. Um, those are extrinsic motivators, and games are super interesting because other than the fact that they're just really culturally relevant, they're designed to foster intrinsic motivation. And, an example that I like to give about this is like golfing. Golfing, if I was like, "Hey, Fonz, what's the goal of golf? Like, what's the task?" What would you answer to that?
Uh, to get the lowest score possible.
Okay, okay. But to do what? What are you doing?
Well, I'm gonna try. My mission is to get this little round ball into every hole in the minimum amount of shots as possible.
Amazing. So you know the rules of golf.
Yeah,
Imagine if you didn't, you would say, take that ball, put it in that hole, right? Basically, right?
yeah,
And if you didn't know the rules, you would probably just what's the easiest way to do that? Pick it up, walk over, put it in the hole, and then say, Fonz, you know what? You need to do that 500 times. And then you would say, are you crazy? That's work. You're gonna have to pay me to do that. And I'd be like, wait, sorry, I didn't explain it to you right. Actually, here's a bag of clubs. They're all different. You'll figure it out, but you got to hit the ball with these sticks. And you need to count your strokes. You can't you don't get an infinite amount of shots here. You got to do the least amount of shots. And I love how you're dressed, but sorry, you got to go home and change. That's not how we're dressed when we do this thing. And in doing that, what I'm doing is putting in arbitrary constraints. Really, I'm designing new constraints that have nothing to do with the task. And the people who go play golf are not I'm not paying them $500 to go do this 500 times or whatever. They're the ones paying their money to go do it. And in fact, I've taken a task, which would be work, redefined it, and created intrinsic motivation. These golfers want to do that. And so we're motivated by situations where we have competency, where we're feeling like we're progressing, to your point about feedback. We're motivated by situations where we feel like we're in control, we can make decisions. And we're motivated by situations where we can share those with other human beings. It's called self-determination theory. And so relationships are everything. What's the connection here? Like Classcraft is taking that psychology of what fosters intrinsic motivation, and we're applying that to how helping teachers relate with their kids, with their students to manage their classroom better. And the truth is, if you can do all the things that are in the teacher manual of like write on the board what you're gonna do prompts, like all those things. If the kids know you don't want to be there, they can tell immediately. They're going to disengage. They're not going to jump in. They're not going to learn. And at the basis of it, the relationships that we're forming between students, but also teachers and students, and even teachers with teachers, when you're thinking at like a leadership level, like that's what makes a school work. Like the single biggest indicator of a thing that we can do to have impact on kids' success is believing in our collective efficacy as a teaching body. And that single belief leads us to do things like care about students, care about, their day, care about the experience they're having. Like I was like, it's okay if you're not like don't always want to be here, but I do want to respect your time. I want to make sure that, like you have to be here, I get it, but that doesn't mean that I have to, like, make you suffer, being here, so what does respecting your time mean? And that doesn't mean it has to be fun all the time, but it does mean it needs to be useful, it needs to be relevant, it needs to be, you need to see that I care about your well-being, and so, for us, all these things are at the core of developing relationships, and Classcraft is a way to do that in a way that is, fostering intrinsic motivation, rigorous, gets you data, and is just super fun.
And you mentioned that data piece also, and I mean, I'm not gonna lie, being at central office,
Of
that's all
course.
I hear about, data. What's the data? What's the usage data? What's is especially, talking about platforms, how often is this being used, because we need to make those decisions, but also, when it comes to examinations and so on. But, I think one of those things that I do love in getting to play with your platform and seeing all the great things that it does, I was like, if I would have known about this, when I was in the classroom, this is definitely something that I would be using, along with what we were doing, because very similar case with you where you did a lot of STEM. My projects too, being a science, social studies, and math teacher, everything was a lot of hands-on approach.
Yep.
Working in groups. Everybody has a Chromebook, and then here's your rubric, and then here's the what you need to present to me in any medium that you feel comfortable
Mhm.
presenting. And so
Mhm.
giving them those choices. And so a lot of students really got engaged with that it wasn't just like you mentioned. It's like, no, like the golf course incident, example that you said, nope, sorry, you can't dress like that. You're going to have to go back and you're going to have to do it this way. Oh, sorry, you can't use that club or you can't do this. This is the way it has to be done. For myself in my classroom, it was here are the requirements, but you can present it in any way, shape, or
Mhm.
form that you like,
Totally.
as long as you're turning in a learning artifact. And so kind of going back to what you're saying, making their time worth it was something that I kind of learned in that sense and being able to experiment with that. But now the fact that we have a platform here through Classcraft where we can have all our students here and really gamify and add that additional layer of
Mhm.
engagement, enthusiasm, and motivation. I mean, the last 2 days that I've been, diving in deep, I'm like, "Oh my goodness, where has this been? Or where was this when I was in the classroom?" Because
Mhm.
I wasn't big on Twitter yet and social media, but I'm really loving the way that honestly, I feel that this would help me support all of my students at one time,
Totally.
because
Mhm.
oftentimes is we try our best with all our students, and if here's an example, if you're a teacher that might be tethered to your desk due to the tech that you may have available, chances are you probably lost the kid all the way across in the corner that's sitting there because
Mhm.
you're the proximity. But being able to kind of move around and then offering something like this, that student would probably be engaged and be listening because they want to make sure that they're participating. So, talk to us a little bit more and just describe the process
Yeah,
of
exactly. How does it
Classcraft.
work, right?
Yeah,
Yep,
how does it
yep,
work?
yep. Alright, so the idea is that teacher just teaches the way they would normally teach. So whatever it is you're doing, it could be STEM, it could be elementary school, could be middle school. Classcraft sits around and on top of that. And in essence, students have a character. So in gaming lingo, it's an avatar. And basically, the teacher, or if you're doing school wide, this can be set at the school wide level. What you can do is set behaviors. So just like in golf, like how do you win at golf? Well, you got to swing the club, or how do you win at a video game like Mario? You got to jump over the holes. Well, in school, how do you win at school? Well, you have to be, be prepared. You got to organize your work. You got to manage your stress. You got to relate well to other students. You have to be able to name your emotions. So these are types of behaviors that make you win. If you see school as a designed experience like a game, that's how you're going to win. And so teachers define that or schools define that. Often they'll do SEL or PBIS or, behavior matrices. These are all things that are already existing in schools. And so they just take that, put that in Classcraft, and they say, hey, Fonz, if you ask a good question, or if you finish your worksheets during class, or if you participate well, you get points. And so often for teachers, we're like, look, if you can give a kid a high five because they're doing something good, then you can play Classcraft. It's literally the same thing. And so, except instead of a high five, we're saying give them experience points. Why points? Because points are super different from, for example, money. A lot of schools are doing behavior with like PBIS dollars. It's extrinsic motivation that wears out over time. It comes to replace intrinsic motivation. If you take it away, the behavior stops. With Classcraft, it's leveling up, and that's like Tetris points. You ever play Tetris? Fonz, probably. We're probably the same age, so
Yeah.
yeah, probably you played Tetris. And what's interesting about Tetris is it's the most repetitive thing you've ever done. Basically, you just drop blocks, start over, and rinse and repeat. So why is it one of the most played games in history of humanity? It's because of the points. The points tell you, they give you immediate specific feedback about you and how good you're doing. So back to that motivation element of competency. You can't spend Tetris points, you can't share them, you can't even do anything with them. They're just there to tell you how you're doing. And so same thing with Classcraft points. You can't spend them. They're there to tell you that you're progressing. Even if you're not the best student, you're always moving forward. You don't level down. And so kids level up. As they level up, they're unlocking all kinds of stuff. So they're unlocking all these like cool swag for their avatars, the like digital swag skins, just like in Fortnite. They're unlocking pets, just like in Pokemon. They're unlocking powers, just like superheroes, except the powers are things that allow them to, instead of bend the laws of physics, it's bend the laws of school. And so it'll be things like you can hand in an assignment late, or you can eat in class, or you can go to the bathroom, or you can work with a partner. Whatever you want to put as a teacher, you can put that in. And but these aren't like one-off. It's not like I'm buying a hall pass. It's I now have this skill and I can trigger it on a recurring basis when I choose to. So again, we're saying the better you do in Classcraft, the more high fives you're getting, the more we trust you. And the more I trust you, the more control I'm going to give you over your life. And for kids, they don't have a lot of control. Like when you think about it, their day is like be in this classroom at this time, shut up and sit down while I present the class. Maybe like do some work, but by the way, like when I tell you to, and for the amount of time I tell you to, and work on what I tell you to. And so what we're doing with Classcraft is allowing them to make decisions, and that's amazing because for them it's super empowering. And then they're on teams. So just like in a football game or in an MMORPG, you can only succeed the dungeon or succeed at football if everybody knows their role on the team. And so we've got guardians, healers, and mages. And then depending on what your character class is, you have different ways of helping each other on the team. And so it really creates this super explicit community of students helping each other out. And once you have that framework, you can do a whole bunch of stuff. You can, take the gold pieces in Classcraft and replace your school store. You can, we have a whole slew of like classroom engagement tools. So you can do like quick formative review. We have a volume meter where you just like put that up in the front of the class. And if kids talk too loud, then everybody loses a heart because they have hearts in Classcraft, which are like lives in a video game. And so it starts off super small, and because you don't like you'd be like, "Oh, I don't know hearts and points and all. I don't know. I'm not a gamer." You don't have to be. Two reasons: A, your kids are gamers; they're all gamers, so they know how to play immediately. You don't even need to explain it to them. But more importantly, too, is we have it like scaling up in from bite size, where like kids don't even have an avatar at the beginning, and you turn it on as you're using it, to like the full blown all this gamey stuff is in there. And so teachers can learn as they go. And for us, it was really important. Like, I don't want to do like all this PD. I want teachers to just dive in with something super simple, and we're seeing them use it. And as they use it, like, hey, Fonz, I see you've given points out 100 times. Maybe you're ready for, move on to the next more advanced features. And so we're here's a tutorial on how to do that. And so we're helping the teachers level up their skills while they're using the platform as well, meeting them where they're at. And then, You could also like, you're like, I love games. I'm fine with tech. I'm going to skip right to the advanced mode. That's fine. Um, but we're allowing teachers to jump in where they're most comfortable and grow as they use the platform. And to be honest, it's kind of mind blowing, the impact that this has with kids. It's like flipping a switch. And we're really fortunate. A lot of ed tech companies don't have a lot of research about their work. If you go on like Google Scholar and type Classcraft, there's like more than 3,000 papers about us or referencing us. There's just lots of researchers all over the world that have been interested in gamification and the stuff that we're doing. And so there's just a lot of research about Classcraft. And a meta study just came out this year about where they looked at 100 different studies and did statistical analysis, and they saw that the impact of Classcraft is statistically demonstrated to have a high impact on student motivation, student academic outcomes. And super interesting when you think about it. We've got studies where students have a 10% better grade average in history, but there's no history content in Classcraft. We're not teaching history. We're literally just helping teachers be more motivating, better manage their classroom, get kids excited so that they can be good, better teachers at teaching history. So there's something really powerful. And that's why like relationships are everything, right? When you get your kids pumped up to be there, when they trust you, when they believe that you're being fair and impartial, because like the teacher becomes like a person just running the game, right? You're not like, oh, Fonz, shut up. And then like the teacher's like focusing on me. It's more like, hey, Fonz, I got to take a heart off because that's the rules of the game. And you're talking, and you're like, oh, cool. I knew that. Like, no problem. And so it separates teachers having to manage their students' behavior out of the relationship that they have with the students. They can maintain the relationship, but because it's a game, the game is the one, saying, hey, like you're not doing the right thing right now, or hey, good job, you're super awesome. And so that really changes the relationship between teachers and students in a pretty profound way. Kind of hard to believe. But once you see it in action, it's just like seeing is believing.
No, not at all. I agree with you, on everything that you said. And, you know, because it reminds me so much of my classroom. The only thing is like I just didn't have that gamification
Mhm,
component. But
mhm.
everything that you're saying really resonates because I can definitely see that being, as a teacher, being in the classroom and having something like this, like you said, those are the rules. You're just, being there. uh, the students know, they're well aware of what's happening. But like you said, building those relationships, seeing that growth, seeing the students engaged, they're highly motivated. All the cylinders are firing for learning to take place. And that's what I love about it. Sean, real quick, I'm gonna we have a guest. We have Erica. Erica,
Hey,
who's
Erica.
joining us on LinkedIn. Erica is a great, great friend. So she had a couple of questions, but first I'm going to go ahead and put in here a couple of the comments that she's joined us with. It says, that is a perfect way to help teachers build skills. Wish I had that data in front of me as a coach. So it's so cool. And then again, she's saying, 100% relationships, meeting the kids where they're at, something's brilliant. But she had a specific question here, and maybe you can answer,
Yep,
through the experience that you've seen. And
yep.
her question here is, I'm curious of how this would work with a 40-minute middle school class teacher or an exploratory teacher. What would be maybe some good practice or something that you
Mhm.
can share with Erica?
Yeah, I mean, we have a ton of teachers in middle school, to be honest. It's like kind of our sweet spot. And the reality is as a teacher, especially in middle school, you're spending 20-30% of your time in classroom management. So whether you realize it or not, most teachers aren't like time yourself. You'll see you're spending 10-15 minutes out of that 40 just managing kids' behavior. So what we're saying is let's save that time by streamlining your classroom management, make it super fast. So the way you would jump in is, hey guys, welcome to Mr. Young's class. We're gonna do some STEM today, but before that, let's do a random event. So Classcraft, there's a random event. You fire that off, and okay, and everybody has to talk like a pirate for the rest of the class. That's our random event. And if you don't, then you lose a heart. And if nobody loses a heart, you'll all get 500 XP at the end of the class. Great. So now we're going into our fractions ER and talking like the pirate, teacher talking. Everybody's talking like a pirate. So that literally took 1 minute. I got everybody, and there's like a scroll that unfurls, and you like, all right, guys, and like the kids get really excited. They'll be like drumming their desk. We want to see what the event's going to be because you decide what they are, but it does pick one at random. And so they're all on the same page. You're now 2 minutes into your classroom. Okay, we're gonna do 15 minutes. I have a lesson for you guys. Then you're gonna work together. Yeah, right. And so if you have any questions, jump in. I'm gonna explain to you how to reduce fractions, whatever it is. Blah 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 blah. While kids are doing that, hey, Erica, you seem to have a question. Yeah, what's this? Blah, blah. That's a great question. Good job. I'll give you 100 XP at the end of the period. Just remind me. So we keep going, blah, blah, blah. And, okay, guys, now here's a little worksheet. You split up into teams. And if you're on task, I'm going to give everybody who's on task points. I'm going to walk around and help you. But if you're on task, I'll give you. And so now I whip out my phone and the kids are working together. They're in groups. I put up on the board a 15-minute timer built into Classcraft with the volume meter. I'm like, guys, I want you to work together. I don't want you too loud. So if this goes over, you're all going to lose hearts. And if not, bonus points for everybody. Now I've got this big volume meter in front of the class on my projector. Kids are working in their workbooks or whatever. And I'm going around and helping them answering questions or whatever. And then I'll say, hey, Fonz and Erica, good job. You guys are super collaborating well. Here's 100 points. High five. Or, hey, you guys, I see you're really working hard through this, like perseverance. Here's some extra points, etc. And so I'm just doing my teacher job, got my phone out. Yeah, you can put out a QR code for each student. So if you want, they like have it on their binder or whatever. You just scan it and give them points. It's super easy. We designed it so it takes 5 seconds to give points. That's like the time it should take. So just as easy as saying, hey, good job, Fonz. I love what you're doing. And here's a high five. So I wrap up my class. Guys, we had a great class. You did great. And, oh, right. You had a good question earlier. I'll give you those points. Have a good day, guys. See you around. And meanwhile, between classes, the kids so I'm in a middle school. So they're doing that with their math class, which is what I just kind of outlined, but they could be doing that in Spanish class, or they could be doing that, whatever, ELA, and getting points for other things. Like, oh, you spoke in Spanish all class. Great. You get points. You use a new vocabulary word or whatever it is. You get points. And so the points that they're getting feed into the same avatar throughout the whole day. And so there's like this super interesting buy-in of like, maybe I don't care about math as a student, but I do care about my avatar. So I'm not going to completely goof off in math because I want to be able to use my privileges and powers and do that use my powers in math or in the other class or whatever. Good comment here, Erica. You're saying, oh, I could put a student in charge. Yes, there's a random picker in Classcraft. You just randomly pick a student, give them the iPad. If they do a good job, they get 300 bonus points, and you literally just call it out to them, like, "Hey, John, give Fonz 100 points. Hey, John, give Sandy 100 points," and they'll do it. And of course, they're going to be honest because everybody's watching them, and if they do a good job, then they get bonus points. So super easy to just offload that to a student. And you just call it out to them, and it's cool because it gets them involved. And then you can get them like, hey guys, what should I be giving you points for? Right? They can be part of the conversation around what are the norms and cool good things to be doing in your class as well. Like they have some pretty good ideas, if they can have a voice, and then they have ownership around what the classroom culture is, etc. So that's an example. There's a lot of tools in Classcraft you can do. We got like quick reviews. I could have ended the class with a quick quiz that you can create on the fly and have kids answer, etc. So yeah,
Yeah,
It
that's I am like so excited. I know Eric is excited. We kind of share the same enthusiasm in a lot of these things, especially within the classroom. But one thing that I had always heard also is that a successful student is always also a well-behaved student. And I know that
yeah.
a lot of discipline issues um, in my approach, and in speaking with one of my colleagues that I work with, a content specialist, a lot of times as teachers, we go in and we teach the way that we were taught. The student doesn't understand it that way, but yet we give them 20 more problems that deal with that. And then all of a sudden, students feel frustrated, they're disengaged. And then,
Mhm.
out of frustration, you get some of that, kind of some behavior issues that may come about. So, he and I kind of see things in reverse. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do it the easier way for the student to understand, whether it's through manipulatives, base 10 blocks, whatever the concrete objects I may have, but at least that they can get the answer in that way. And then I'll work towards the traditional algorithm. But in taking that mentality, again, going back to customer service, coming in from business, that's kind of the way that it really worked. And I'm seeing that Classcraft is really going to do a really good job in hitting all of those components as far as the engagement, the SEL, building, of course, the rapport between students. You've got, maybe students that normally may not, hang around. You'll start seeing them, being able to speak in class. And maybe sometimes what I loved about it is when I would see that, later they found out they had a lot more in common that they really, didn't know about
Totally,
because
totally.
of this. And so I'm really excited about, what you've just described and really the potential that this has. And of course, you have the research too, because I know that there's hundreds and thousands of schools that are using this and millions of students, that are using this also as well. So, and the research is there. So one thing that I did want to point out as I was looking through your page that I absolutely loved when you talk about research, you have, research articles or related articles, research guides that are here as well. And I think that's something that's important because as from and this is just from the central office standpoint of view, it's well, is this aligned to our standards? Is there research behind it? Is there's this? So I love that you do have this available here for anybody that might be interested in having something to present, to share about this great program. So tell us a little bit more as far as the research that did go into Classcraft or, the research that Classcraft is also being used for. I know you talked about higher ed space too, using this as far as
Mhm.
gamification. But for us in the K-12 space, we kind of talked a little bit how higher ed kind of gatekeeps a lot of information and makes it hard for teachers
Mhm. Mhm.
to get to that research. What are some of the offerings that you have on your page as far as research for teachers and maybe district level admin?
Yep. So I'd say that like from that perspective, there's like three core maybe four. So one is we're just republishing actual straight up papers um that we're not actually involved with. A lot of companies pay for research where unfortunately we didn't the research is just being made by people because they're interested in the work we're doing. And by people, I mean, universities and professors all over the world and, grad students. And so we pretty on a pretty regular basis will go on like Google Scholar and find them. And, uh, sometimes we'll buy them and put the PDF on our and just like take the gate away, and we're like putting a little digest here, like the highlights of this. A lot of it's obviously research about Classcraft, but also around like gamification, behavior intervention, that stuff. And we also have a lot of case studies. So we really encourage our districts to measure outcomes, right? Like do Classcraft before and after. Like it's super easy, and we'll see districts saying we're saving 80% of our time on from classroom management is done. We're saving that, or we're seeing like 85% reduction in referrals or 90% reduction in suspensions. These are metrics that districts are already tracking, and so we're saying like me- before we start, look at what your last year was, and let's talk in 6 months, and you'll see the impact. So, because often like usage is king in terms of renewing ed tech, but our like for us, yes, of course, but like usage of something that doesn't work, who cares, right? So usage is just a proxy for you believe that it works and there's buy-in. I'd much rather be measuring outcomes like, hey, you're actually reducing referrals or increasing attendance. These are the things you actually care about, not how many logins do I have in this platform? Like who really cares about? Nobody cares. Like people care about it, but I think they're wrong to care about it. Let's be clear. I think they should be caring about, what is the pedagogical outcome here. So we're encouraging our districts to do that, and they're gracious enough to share those metrics, and so we republish some of that. We also have I've been doing my own little podcast as we're talking, and I'd say my own what Classcraft is, and we're interviewing researchers, and the goal is get the research out, get them to talk about these are people who've been doing 40 years of research on motivation or on SEL before it was a hot, trendy topic. And, in the 80s, there's like fascinating research in these people's minds that is, hidden away in papers and books. And, an hour conversation with some of those guys is just really fascinating stuff. And so I really believe in our role. Like Classcraft is a B Corp, and what that means is yes, we're a corporation, but we have it written in our company bylaws that we're committed to having an impact, positive impact on our users and our community. And a way we can do that is use the platform that we have and all the users and the social media and all those things to further education and education thought. And so I take that responsibility extremely seriously, that we're acting in and within schools, and we have the power to do a lot of really important things. Another example is, when you think about behavior intervention, which is, the part of education that we're falling under, there's a lot of disproportionality in behavior intervention towards minority students. Black kids get 2-to-1 suspensions versus the proportion of Black kids in a school across the U.S. Kids with an IDA plan and disabilities, same thing. Boys versus girls. So when we think about behavior intervention, being able to present the data in a way that allows to see those discrepancies is super important. And I think a lot of schools aren't aware that that's happening. They're just not looking at it. And our role is to bring some of that stuff to light for them, because the reality is, like, hey, when I'm giving you a high five, I'm also in Classcraft, like giving you points. I'm also logging that behavior. And so the back end of Classcraft is just really rich, super interesting reports of data that schools usually don't have, right? When you think about behavior data, schools usually have number of referrals, number of suspensions, number of incidents. Like that's, and what they're tracking is kids that are, the 10% of kids that are really struggling to behave properly when they're at their worst. What about the 90% of other kids? What do I know about them? And most schools don't know anything about those kids and how they're behaving. And that's why positive behavior data is so key, because all the kids have positive behavior. If we're able to capture that in a way that's no work, like with Classcraft, then what we're doing is allowing to have a really clear picture of every single child, how they're behaving throughout the day. And from there, develop interventions and strategies, or just celebrate them. So there's a lot to be done in that front. As you can see, I'm pretty passionate about this.
Yes, and that's something that I said, because I am getting so pumped, like, listening to you, because this is everything that I wish I could just straight up tell maybe sometimes certain people, just say, listen to this.
We won't name
that,"
names.
and I won't name names, but now all I know is that, hey, I'm going to put this podcast out there, and I'm going to say, hey, check this out, because it's not just me saying it. It's, somebody that is living it. And just like Erica said here, I love her comment here. says, yes, you are living your purpose. It is so great. And definitely, we can definitely sense the passion that you have about this. Here's a comment from JC. Hopefully, I'm saying that right. JC says, love the tracking of good data. Do students carry their avatar and points from year to year? And is there any issue for new students coming into the class halfway through the year and starting with no points in Classcraft? Are they at a disadvantage or are they okay? So, before we kind of wrap up, if you can maybe just give JC a quick
Yep.
answer here on
Yep.
some of these.
Yep. Totally. So, some very specific questions. So you can carry the avatars. We recommend not. And the reason for that is, first of all, you can't collect everything in Classcraft unless you have multiple different types of avatars year over year. So kids will want to change character classes, etc. But more importantly, like from a growth mindset perspective, if I have a student who really struggled in fifth grade and, let's say they ended the year at level 10 or 20, but all the other kids are like level 50, to start back the year, you're already still behind, like, that's super demotivating. Whereas that kid might say over the summer, like, "Okay, this year is I'm starting fresh, I'm really gonna crush it." It's just heartbreaking if you're already 30 levels behind everybody. So we really recommend and we have features to do that, like, you can archive the characters, start over. They keep them in, like it's like a hall of fame of their old characters, and some of the stuff they've collected, they can carry on to their new character, but the points should reset, for that reason. The other question there was, what if a student comes in mid-year? What do you do? We recommend just give them the amount of points that the lowest in your class has. So if everybody's like, between level 15 and level 30 and new kid coming in, just put them at level 15. Um, if you put them higher than the minimum, the kids that worked for those points will be like, that's unfair. Like, I worked for my points. Why do they get a free pass? And if you put them at 0, that's super demotivating for that newbie. So, so we just recommend put them at the lowest. Most kids will think that that's fair. Um, there was a question about cost earlier too. Maybe we can touch on that.
Sure,
Fun.
sure. Yeah, I did put in
Uh,
the link directly
okay.
to the
Okay.
Classcraft pricing
Perfect.
page, and it
Perfect.
was for
Yep.
JC. So, I mean, she can go ahead and check that out. Unless if
Excellent.
there's anything else you'd like to add about that, that's not a problem. We can go ahead and share that.
This is just me being a teacher. I want to get to all the questions. But there's a free version, and there's no time limit on that free version. So really low risk to go and start and poke around. There's a teacher version, and there's a school-wide, district-wide version as well. The paid version has just more features, more swag, more cool stuff for the kids, more cool stuff for the teacher as well, like cooler tools as well. And the school-wide version just has some like cool stuff, like being able to share students between teachers or have really the robust analytics, or things like a school store, things that really are super relevant to, because the reality is we have schools that they'll take their existing PBIS system and just replace it with Classcraft, and that's a lot of the features are to make that happen super easily.
Excellent. Well, Sean, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing this. I did want to add also just that data piece. I mean, oftentimes you go into a lot of meetings and it's really the data. There really isn't any data. I always talk about this, that thanks to the way that I manage my classroom and working in collaborative groups and working with Chromebooks, all the students
Mhm.
really kind of, the beautiful thing about it is that they ended up developing a portfolio. And just because everything was just, hey, we're going to save everything on Google Drive, save everything on
Yep,
Google
yep.
Drive, Google Classroom. So when sometimes you go into an RTI meeting or 504 meeting or any kind of meeting,
Mhm.
sometimes teachers go in there and they just say, well, the student's failing. Well, why are they failing? Well, they didn't pass this test and they didn't pass this test and they didn't pass this test. So everything is
They
centered
just
around
wanna
the
strangle
grade.
them when they see.
Everything is centered around the grade and
Yep,
not the
yep,
learning. So
absolutely,
what I loved is when
absolutely.
I went into a meeting, it was like, can you show us where the student was at the beginning, where they're at now? Absolutely. Let me pull up all their work here on
Mhm.
Google Drive. Notice the language acquisition. Oh, listen to the video. She created a video about this. Did you hear the language, improve from the beginning to now? And so what I loved is
Absolutely.
when I heard them say, hey, you know what? We are going to adjust some of these accommodations, maybe lessen the time because we see growth, or you know what? They can exit out of this program because they've mastered what they needed to.
Mhm.
And that's the beautiful part about that data piece. So also
Well,
this,
and in a way, like Classcraft is a behavior
yes,
portfolio, right? Like,
yes, the behavior.
just imagine the same discussion, like, how is my child behaving?
Well,
Oh, well, eh,
yeah,
whatever. It's just opinions, right? Teachers don't actually like they don't remember the 60 days of a student's behavior for every single child.
yeah,
And so, like, this is its exact way to do, like, "Oh, yeah, look, I can see, like, some of Fonz's strengths are being empathetic, being organized. These are the things he's getting points for. Oh, but he's struggling with showing up on time."
mhm,
So, like, that's we're gonna have to work on that little piece, but those are his strengths. And most teachers can't easily conclusively point towards SEL growth either. So we're, this is a lot of SEL. So a lot of the behaviors we're putting in are SEL behaviors. How do you assess SEL? Like, if I want to know if you're good at empathy and I give you a multiple choice about quiz about empathy, like, is that like, no. So how do I assess that? Well, what I need to do is tell you what empathy looks like, teach it to you. And then I need to see you practice it in real contexts. And when that happens, I need to give you feedback because I want you to develop, like, hey, good job. That's exactly what empathy looks like. High five. But then I need to like capture that so that I can go back and say, like, oh, Fonz demonstrated empathy 32 times this term. I think he's got it. And that's how we're gonna assess SEL. It's not surveys with mood stuff and all this stuff that's going on, and it's definitely not through traditional curriculum. It's by observing skills being deployed in genuine contexts. And if we want to do that in a way that's not a lot of work, we got to fit it into our classroom management with an approach like this. So I think that there's a reckoning coming for SEL assessment, and we're I, don't- education hasn't solved it yet.
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
no worries. And so Erica here says, "Yep, natural SEL just happens. It's why I
yeah.
love green screen, etc. Fun to witness." She does a lot of great work with green screen.
Mm-mm.
All right, well, Sean, it's been an amazing conversation. Really has
Thank you.
pumped me up. Thank you so much for sharing, and definitely sharing your passion, your vision, and your mission. Here with Classcraft, everything that
Yep.
you have created it for and set out to do, and definitely being very successful. So thank you so much for sharing this and where it comes from. And it's really, there's a lot of heart that goes into this, and I can definitely tell by the way that you and I were talking and having this conversation. But before we wrap up, Sean, I always love to end the
I got my
show,
3 questions. All
yep,
right.
with the three
All right,
questions.
all
So
right, all
here
right.
we go, Sean. In the current state of education, what would you say is your current edu kryptonite?
Honestly, this is a hard one. There's a lot of tough things going on in education. I think for us, as we're implementing and rolling out, like, the current turnover and personnel crisis in education right now is just really hurting us. We're rolling out schools, the principal buys Classcraft, and a month later, they're gone. And the replacement has no idea what I'm talking like, "Who are you? What is this?" It's just been really hard to, like, systematically, or we have a school this fall that loves Classcraft, we're rolling it out, but we can't do it now because I have 43 teacher positions and 19 are unfilled. Like just the so, like, the profession right now is really hurting, and I don't see that getting solved immediately, very quickly, but I think we have, like, a systemic reckoning to do about, like, how do we recognize teachers? How do we pay them a better wage? How do we make that profession one that people wanna be in and stick around in? I mean, I love teaching. I only stopped teaching because Classcraft accidentally became a thing. And I think that there's a lot of folks that loves teaching that have left over the last few years just because the conditions are so challenging, and that makes it hard for any pedagogy to get implemented and scale and have impact because you need the dedicated, happy people that are there building relationships, and right now there's just not enough of that.
All right, good answer. All right. Second question, Sean. If
Yep.
you could have a billboard with anything on it, what would it be and why?
I have to go with our tagline, relationships are everything. And I would just I mean, I have it on like a water bottles and stuff. Like that's true, period. It's not just an education billboard. I would just write that and put that in a big traffic jam so people can think about that as they're getting road rage and angry and
Yeah.
there's so much division right now socially and you know in education we're seeing it, but we're seeing it all over every single part of society. And I think we just need to remember, like, we're human beings here. Really, at the end of the day, all that matters is how we relate to one another, how we help each other, how we build community. So I'm just gonna stick with our motto.
I love it. No, but it works out great. I mean, it's
Yeah.
really, it is essential. Relationships are everything. So I do agree with you 100%. All right, Sean, last question. This is the Classcraft podcast. You are the host and I am your guest. What is one question you'd like to ask me?
Oh man. I really like to know what people's hobbies are. Um, and I interview a lot of people. I always ask them that every interview I do and I mean like for job interviews, like and for candidates. So what's your hobby? And you can't say podcasting ed tech stuff.
Okay, no worries. Okay. So one of yeah, because that would be too easy. I mean, I love to do this. This is like, I wish
Yeah.
this could be my full-time gig someday and
Yeah.
just do this. That'd be great. But really, I know it seems really nerdy and everything, but really my hobby is I like to learn and I like to read. So as you know, we talked a little bit about my doctoral studies and everything.
Mhm.
And that's something that really has in these last 6 years now, from master's till now, just being able to learn and connect with people. That is really, aside from podcasting, that's why I love your tagline, relationships are everything. But being able to connect people and connect with people has been something that's been very important, because it's been fulfilling for me to be able to meet somebody at a conference, connect with them, and then be able to refer them to somebody. Because I always say, if you have a question, feel free to reach out. If I can't solve it, I'll connect you with somebody who
Yeah.
can. And
Yeah.
so being that connector piece also is something that is very important. So
Mm.
really, it's nerding out, continually learning new things. Just, I always say, always be ready in season and out of season. And how do you do that? By continuing to learn. And so those are my favorite things, just reading and learning something new that I didn't know and diving in deep. And
Can I get a
some,
second question, Fawn?
sure.
What's a good book you just read? What should I read?
Oh, what you should
I'm
really,
a huge reader. I read
okay.
50 books a
So
year.
really right now currently I
Yeah.
am in the middle of reading this book from my friend Ashley Hubner,
Mm.
who is on the show, Foundations of Instructional Coaching. So this has been a really good book to really help me sharpen my skills up a little bit more, and she just does it so wonderfully. She was a guest on the show, and so I purchased one of the books because I love to support my guests as well. But she definitely, it's a really great read. So I
I
definitely
love it.
recommend it. Look her up. I'll
I
send you
love you've got it
the
right
link.
there.
Yes. Yeah. Well, this is where I sit and this
Yeah.
is where I'm like, I do my reading. So yeah. So again, it just, again, helps me to really just kind of like sometimes, bring that passion back and just say, hey, let me try this a little differently. And like I always say here to all our audience members, it's like, from every guest, take what you can and see what you can sprinkle on to what you already do great.
Yeah,
So
yeah, totally.
yeah, there you go. Well, Sean,
Thank
it's
you.
been an amazing conversation. Thank you
Yeah,
so much. I have put in the links to Classcraft for the website, for Twitter. All of the other links will be on the show notes as well. Thank you so much, as always, from the bottom of my heart, for just being such a great guest, sharing your passion. And for our audience members, Erica, thank you so much. It's
agreed.
great to catch up with you, Erica. JC, I know you joined us for the very first time. It's the first time I see you here on the show as well. So thank you for joining us this evening and being able to have some questions here for Sean. And for all of you that are watching and listening, as always, like I always say from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for your support. Please make sure that you go to our website, myedtech.life, where you can check out this amazing show and the other 152 other shows where, like I just mentioned right now, you can learn from amazing teachers, take what you can from them, sprinkle it onto what you already do great, and maybe reignite and just relight that fire and passion and inspiration for our craft and what we do. Also, please don't hesitate to stop by our merch store and you can get yourself some My EdTech Life merch. We've got this brand new design here too as well, so you can stop by and it's a great way to help support our show and, as you know, contribute to our mission of connecting educators and creators, education professionals, one show at a time. So make sure you hit like, subscribe, and follow. And as always, my friends, until next time, don't forget, stay techie.